All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Are you ready, Peter, for podcast number 457?
Wow.
We're
457.
almost up to the point where we're as old as you.
You'll
that
never catch up. You
that
can't do it.
was
Never.
a cheap shot because you're what, 75 now or 74?
I'm damn near 75 this summer. Big
That's what
party
I thought.
coming. Everyone's invited.
I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So at this party, are we going to have like solid food, or is it going to be like, soft food?
It's mostly liquids, straws.
Yeah, you're good. You're good at me jabbing you this morning. So, anyways, thanks for teasing with me. Here's today's title: How to do subject to creative real estate deals legally. So I just want to emphasize, this is not a podcast, although I'm going to give you a blueprint at the end. It's a mini blueprint on how to do subject to deals. This podcast is named How to Do Subject to Creative Real Estate Deals Legally. So I'm not going to be diving into all the pieces and the parts of subject to, but I'm going to cover the most basic. And once you understand the fundamentals, all the rest of it will fall together in your head like soldiers lining up for a roll call. Okay, so here is the description.
Okay.
They said subject to creative real estate was impossible. Then they called it illegal. And now they are trying to hide it completely. But the truth is, it is the most creative real estate strategy we have in our arsenal to date. This isn't theory. This is the actual technique I have used for multiple times to become a millionaire in short order. And once you hear the precise legal mechanism that allows me to take ownership while keeping the original financing in place, and the banks love this when we do it. Not to mention, never try to stop us with the due on sale clause ever. But you must know this method is so powerful, yet easy. You may not take it as underground hidden secrets that established entrepreneurs guard so much. And why politicians coordinate this strategy from reaching the average person. They're hiding it from us.
No way. They wouldn't do things like that.
Exactly. However, realize this wealth creation strategy knowledge spreads, right? So realize as this wealth creation knowledge spreads, the opportunity window narrows, which means this episode could be your telltale to get moving before the method becomes mainstream and harder to find and complete before you're worth millions. Right? How many times have we seen that? It's like we have a new strategy come out, and then, it's kind of like underground. There's a few people teaching it. It's like a new shiny object. And the next thing you know, it's mainstream. Everybody's doing it. And all of a sudden, nobody's getting deals. Let me give you a classic example of this. I have for 3 decades, in case you don't know what a decade is, that's 30 years. I have been using one source for all of my leads for 30 years. It's called an out of area owner.
Right.
Yeah. That means that the tax bill is being mailed to a address that's not the property address. We used to go to the post we used to go not to the post office. We used to go to the tax office, get CDs, paper. In the beginning it was paper. And we would separate the mailed tax bills that were different than the property address.
Yep.
And I used that list and bought up to 8-9 houses a month for years. And then COVID came and they shut down the country.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go in the house. Realtors got shut down. Bankers, there was a big, bankers did good because they were doing refis.
Oh, that's how they survived?
It wasn't new purchases, right?
Mm.
So all of a sudden during COVID, because we can't, find the houses for sale by owners, REOs, real estate owned from bankers and all this stuff, it became popular to send texts to out of area owners.
Yeah.
Now we do it, and what happens? It's like a freaking crowded concert, and you can't get a beer because it takes you 4 hours to get across the hall to get to the concession stand because there's just too many people. So that's what I'm talking about. A little bit of a rant there, but that's what I'm talking about. So you heed my warning or not, but it is going to be mainstream because of what I'm going to teach you today. Okay, but
Sure.
before we get started, let's get into the housekeeping aspect of the podcast. Basically, here's what happens. Please like us and subscribe to us wherever you're watching us or listening to us, so you can get a plethora. Plethora means so much information, because every week we do an hour podcast, and been doing that for 457 weeks. I don't know how long is that? 457 divided by 12. So that's says 38 years. That's not right, is it?
No, try again.
457 divided by 12. Yeah, it says 38. Anyways, we've been doing it probably about 8 years, right? Oh, I know why. Because it's divided by 52.
Oh, weeks. Yeah.
Divided by
weeks.
52. So that's almost 9 years, 8.78 years. So that means if you want to know about creative real estate, we're on podcast number 457. That means you've got almost 500 hours of training. Now, here's what I had to do, because that's way too much, right? Because we say that the world today is overwhelmed with information, but starving for wisdom.
Sure.
So the information is here on this podcast, and I reveal all kinds of stuff. I'm not bashful about telling the truth and letting people know the behind the scenes, and we reveal a lot of stuff. But if you want wisdom, I isolate, and I just started doing this, I isolate the most valuable trainings, and wisdom means knowledge with experience, into a weekly newsletter. And that newsletter is at creativerealestatedealology.com. No, it's Creative Real Estate Dealology newsletter.com/subscribe. It is in the description of this podcast. Again, it's Creative Real Estate Dealology newsletter.com/subscribe. It is a free newsletter. You should go check it out. Also, I have just released a book called Leads, Deals, Cash, Creative Real Estate Operator's Manual by William Hawthorne. Hawthorne does not have an E at the end of it. Just go to Amazon and type in William Hawthorne, and you will find my 7 or 8 books, that being the latest book. It's out of my 7 books, or I think it's 7 or 8 books. 7 books, we'll say. It is my bestseller. Not that it's a bestseller on any chart. It's just that people that are reading it are giving me great feedback on it. You were just telling me before we started this podcast, right? How it lays things out step by step in creative real estate.
Yeah, I had one of my friends buy it a couple weeks back. He read the book in one day.
Really?
He didn't put it down. Yeah, he kept reading the whole day.
All right, cool. So that said, housekeeping's done. Here we go. Startup podcast. What exactly is this subject to creative real estate strategy? Right? So subject to is a special way of buying a house where you, meaning the buyer, take over the seller's existing financing payments without getting a new loan or applying for the loan or getting new existing financing.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest difference between creative real estate and regular real estate, the number one biggest difference is creative real estate does not replace the loan in the deal, where regular real estate replaces the loan in the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And unless it's free and clear, that's a different story. But the point is that in creative real estate, we call it a Fred system, FRED, Fred, like Freddie Grieger. Is that his name?
Yeah, Krieger.
Krieger. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's FRED. So it stands for flipping real estate documents.
Mm-hmm.
So creative real estate controls the documents in the deal, not the money. Where the FREP system, which is the flipping real estate property, is done by realtors, and they think they're superior. We've been around for much longer. Creative real estate has been around for thousands of years. Realtors been around for maybe 75 years. The difference is that FREP is all about property condition and the money. It replaces the existing money in the deal and gets new money. We don't do that. What we do in creative real estate is we're going to reuse the money that's already in the deal, and we're going to make it so that the seller has a tremendous advantage and makes more money for letting us use their asset. Okay? Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And the crazy thing about it, you would think, well, I guess the seller must lose something. No.
No.
You don't have to. In the right circumstance, the right transaction, the seller succeeds, the investor in the middle succeeds, and the buyer succeeds. If you're smart enough, why not have us so that you know who loses? The bank. They don't need any more money.
Yeah.
They just go print it.
So just think of this as walking into a car dealership.
Yeah.
Right? So if you walk into the car dealership and you want to pay cash, you get the best price, right? Because you're going to give them a check right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you finance, what happens? You're going to pay more because you got to pay all the finance charges. You don't have the cash.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the way it is in real estate. Like if you use all cash and replace the money, then the person getting the money and giving it to the seller wants to pay the least amount.
Sure.
So that system is where you get less money. In creative real estate, you get more money. We have a system called the slot deal, sandwich lease option transfer, and I'm way off a topic here, where we actually give the seller 35% more than market value because they're willing to wait 3 years to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that's for other podcasts. Okay, so subject to is slang. It's a slang terminology that showed up in the 70s.
Oh.
Right? It's slang because you're leaving the existing loan in place and you're taking over the seller's promised agreements with the lender, subject to the agreements the seller made with the lender.
Mm-hmm. You're complying with the original loan terms.
Right. So if it's 35% interest and you got to make a payment every single day, you're agreeing to that.
Okay.
Okay. Realize if you've been around for a while, or if you are a real estate geek like I am,
Mm-hmm.
and you study quite a bit, up until the late 70s, I'm pretty sure it's the late 70s, there was things such as, it might be the late 80s, but it used to be the federal loans like FHA, all those loans, the HUD mortgages, those used to be assumable.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was up until 1979. I think Nixon changed that, but they used to be assumable, so you could put in an application and take over the loan and not really apply. You didn't have to go through all the closing, like with all that.
Wow.
And I'm gonna you'll see as I go today. So Muscat, am I saying that right? Muscat Mims says hi. Hello. Thank
Hello.
you for being here. All right. So
Oh.
to do this, so it's like the old assumable loans, which
Mhm.
is why subject to was not popular back then.
Well, you didn't need it if you could just assume it.
Right.
You were
So
doing it.
once they, because you have to realize every catastrophic change in real estate comes up with a new strategy,
Ah,
right? So
yeah.
this was the concept after they took away the assumable loans. All
Mhm.
right, so to do this, the subject to loans, your seller gives the person or entity taking over the loan, because it could be you or your business, right?
Mhm.
So whoever's taking over the loan subject to the seller's obligations to the lender, the deeds, so they're now on public record. So if I'm taking over your property subject to, Peter, and I'm taking responsibility to pay your loan, I'm going to get the deed in my name.
Sure. You're making the payments. It should be your deed.
And yeah, but it's more specific than that, and I'm going to cover it today because
Mhm.
I've never covered it I covered it like this in an event I had, a 6.5 hour event, and it cost several $100s to be in that event. And this is the first time I'm actually talking about this in public.
Hmm.
Okay. But to fully understand the process, we must completely understand two very, very, very important underlying fundamentals of how real estate transactions occur in the USA.
Mhm.
Once you understand these fundamentals, subject to becomes a piece of cake. And the reason why most people don't understand subject to is because they don't understand these fundamentals and it's too steep of a gradient and they get in trouble.
Oh.
And they believe all the myths that subject to can't be done.
Mhm.
So, first is how does the money actually work in the deal? In a finance transaction, how does the money work?
Sure.
Right? So, once a lender approves a buyer financially, so they have the financial ability to pay the money owed, there's a closing. Okay.
Right.
So, what I mean by that is right now you call a mortgage broker or agent or lender. It could be a bank, it could be private money, it could be hard money, it could be your uncle, it could be your mom, whatever. You speak to the person that, well, mostly it's institutions what I'm talking about, but you speak to the person that is going to lend you the money. And
Mhm.
you say, I want to borrow. So right now you call an institutional bank and you say, I want to buy a house. I see one, it's worth 400,000 and I want to buy that house. So they're going to go through how they're going to ask you what's your credit like. Well, I think my credit's like 680. I think, then they're going to ask you how much money do you have for a down payment. And then they're going to ask you how much your income is. And they're going to go through a battery of questions. And when you answer those questions, of course, you could be lying.
Hmm.
That's a common thing.
Yeah.
Or not lying, but exaggerating. Like one year you made $80,000 and you're telling me you made 80, but most years you make 60. But you had one good year.
Well, I just saw something. I applied for something. They asked me, "What's your income or what's your projected income? What do you think you're going to make?" Like, oh,
Right.
I think I'm gonna.
Right.
So they even open the door to let you think what might happen. Like, oh, I'm going to get a raise. I'm going to get a. They leave you. They let you do it.
Right.
It's in writing. It's like, okay, I'm making that much.
So once you go through this process, I got that. So once you go through this process, the next thing that has to happen, so that's what they call a pre-approval.
Mm-hmm.
Then once they do that, they go to what they call underwriting. And underwriting simply means that they are going to get all the evidence of what you said to make sure it's really true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Sure.
that takes 10 to 14 days usually in most purchase sale contract. The seller will allow you to go do that for 10 to 14 days. Once they do that, underwriting means just that. Underwriting.
Yeah, they're right. I take words like that. You would flip them. They're
Yeah.
writing under,
Yeah.
like at the end. If you just turn words backwards, it make more sense. They're writing under at the end of the document. Yep, we're
So
doing it. They sign it.
what that means is they are presenting the package for the lender,
Mm-hmm.
and then they send it to the lender, and then the lender reviews it and says yay or nay.
Sure.
Often the lender will come back and say you're missing this, you're missing that. And then at some point in the process, the lender will say, okay, I have all the paperwork, I've done all my due diligence, and we're going to give you a clear to close.
Mm-hmm.
Clear to close means the bank, the lender, the one that has the money, says, yes, we approve this. Yes, we have put the money aside. Yes, it's in quote unquote escrow, although they don't do that. It's aside and it's in a special account and it's ready for your taking. At that point, the closing happens and all the documents get signed. And when the documents get submitted, the money gets released. That's a closing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what we're going to talk about. For this closing, a note has to be drafted. This note is all of the language of how much money is being lended. It talks about interest rate. It talks about the time of the monthly payments. If it's defaulted, there's language in there like if the house gets or the property gets destroyed, like in a fire or earthquake, who gets the money first, who gets the money second.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about all the legal stuff to protect the lender. Like it also includes like they also call it first. Oh my god, I just went blank. First right. Oh no. I just lost my words. But who gets the insurance money first?
Right. To be a
Right.
sequence, like a priority.
Right. So
Yeah.
if the house does burn down, like just in LA, California, all those houses burn down, and the insurance companies are going to pay those claims. Like, so who gets the money first? Who gets the money second? And who doesn't? Who doesn't get the money?
Mm-hmm.
Eminent domain is another one. Eminent domain is when the city comes in and they say, we're putting a highway through here and we're taking your property and we're going to give you this much, and you can't really say yay or nay. They just give you that much money and they just take your property. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the legal IOU from the buyer to the lender. The note is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? However, a note itself has no teeth or power. As I say in many seminars in the past, it's like toilet paper.
Okay.
Right? It's a simple agreement. It doesn't guarantee the lender will get paid if the borrower fails to pay.
Sure.
It has none of that, the teeth to do that. It's not a legal instrument to do that. Right? Now, yes, you could take someone to court with the note and you could force them to pay, but you can't get blood out of a rock, right? If somebody's not paying you, it's more than likely it's because they lost a job or there's some physical catastrophe or something happened. It's not usually resentment where they just decided to stop paying you. It's usually some catastrophic thing that happens in their life, right?
Yeah.
So the note doesn't have that ramification. It doesn't have that horsepower to go get the lender the money. The mortgage does that. Okay. This is the legal document that ties the note to a specific piece of property. So it's like a bridge between the note and the property. So the note has all of the language, all of the legalese on how the money was lended and how it's expected to come back. It's the rules and regulations between the lender and the borrower.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The mortgage is the muscle. The mortgage is what has the teeth and the horsepower to get the lender their money back. And the reason why is because you're hooking the note and the specific piece of property together and calling the property collateral. Right? And collateral simply means that something that is pledged as a security for repayment of a loan that has been forfeited or goes into default for any part of the note agreement.
Sure.
So you know that the person borrowing the money it may not have all that money. If they did, they would have paid cash, right?
Sure.
So if they default on the note, the legal thing, the thing that I call toilet paper, right? Because it's useless if the person doesn't have money,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's good. It's good while you're using it, but once you're done using it, it's like it's not useful anymore. You're done using it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the mortgage is the legal instrument that allows the foreclosure courts to take the title back in the lender's name, right?
Right. So the note is the loan, and the mortgage connects the collateral to the house. So when people say, I'm going to go get a mortgage, it's really not correct. They should say, I'm going to go get a loan.
Right.
But we kind of generalize and throw it all together. But if you separate all that, it's exactly like you say, and that kind of the connectivity of it all. Because go to the bank and see if you can get a loan without having a house. I'd like to borrow $300,000. You have a house? No.
Or what they call that unsecured debt, and secured debt is with collateral.
Right.
I mean, President Trump is talking about that right now. I find it absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Like what?
He said they just signed a minerals deal with Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right. If you listen to President Trump, and not everybody does, because a lot of people don't like him, and that's a shame, because if you listen to his anyways, so he says that we have given Ukraine $350 billion unsecured money.
Exactly.
Europe gave Ukraine $100 billion secured. So that means that Europe has collateral and they got a loan. So that Ukraine is paying them back.
Yeah, ours wasn't even a loan, was it? It was just, here's some money. It wasn't even a loan.
Unsecured debt. He says they're putting it into bank accounts and nobody's even checking to see who's taking the money out of the bank accounts.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the difference. So what they did with the minerals deal is they put they put collateral to the $350 billion. Sure. So now they have to pay it. So they're going to pay it back with minerals, with materials in the ground. Right.
Nice.
So
nice.
It's a good example in today's economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, the mortgage is the legal instrument that allows foreclosure courts to take the title back. The reason why there's foreclosure courts, and I don't, because we're already too far into the podcast, and I've kind of wasted a lot of, not wasted of time, but we got a lot to cover here. The reason why foreclosure courts are in place is because it's called equity stripping. Because there are lenders that would say, oh, they owe $250 and the market went up, appreciation went up so much that it's worth $400.
Mm-hmm.
So they missed the payment by 35 seconds, so let's foreclose. And they're looking to steal the equity. Okay. Matter of fact, I'm not going to talk about this now, but just so you can kind of count my concept. Like, I'm going through some asset protection right now, and I told my lawyer yesterday that I have too many properties in one entity. And I told him point blank, it's like, look, I'm not looking to protect the properties. Asset protection has nothing to do with protecting those properties. Mm-hmm. It has everything to do with how much equity I have in those properties. The asset protection is to protect the equity, not the properties.
Oh.
They can have, if I got a property that only has $20,000 worth of equity, let them take it. I don't give a shit. Mm-hmm. But I have a house that's free and clear in there that's worth $300,000 and I owe $14,000 or $12,000 on it. I'm worried about that. Mm-hmm. Right? So this is the reason why banks have foreclosure, because there was equity stripping and they were coming after loans that had a lot of equity. Because if the institutional banks had their way, there would be no equity in America. There would be no equity. There would be loans on all of it, and the bankers would be collecting their money.
That's all they care about. My family's been in the banking as clerks and workers, and that's all they push. They want loans, they want interest, they want your stuff.
Exactly. All right. So I know this sounds like a bunch of legal jargon, and I'm not talking about subject 2, but I promise this is all going to make sense in just a few minutes when you hear what I have to say, because you're going to understand the foundations. Mm-hmm. Right. The second thing that I would like to, because remember I told you there's two fundamentals, two things that you need to know. So the second thing would be I would like to clear up is with everyday common real estate, there's a difference between the title and a deed.
Hmm.
So just like there's a difference between the note and the mortgage, and most
Mm-hmm.
don't know what that is, there's a
Mm-hmm.
difference between a title and a deed.
Hmm.
So a title is the legal term that refers to the ownership of something. For example, if my actions, right, every single day are being a plumber, like my actions every single day are being a plumber,
Yeah.
then my title would be the plumber,
Okay.
right? Relationships have trouble with this because responsibility
Oh.
comes up not because the two parties agreed I'm going to do the garbage and the grass and you're going to cook and clean. It's not because that stuff happens, being chauvinistic. It's because one person does the grass every week, one person does the laundry every week, one person does the cooking every week, and by the virtual or doingness of it, it gives them that title. Oh, well, that person does the laundry every week.
Yeah.
That person cuts the grass. By doing it, it gives them the title, right?
You assume it because you take it on yourself because you're doing it, so you must be the guy.
Yeah. So like I say all the time, uh, don't listen to what they say. Pay attention to what they're doing,
Right.
right? So my title is plumber. It tells folks I have ownership or knowledge over installing and repairing the pipes and fittings and water supply.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's my title. So title is ownership over someone's role, like I was just talking about, like I had the role of taking out the garbage, I own it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's so a title is ownership over someone's role and ownership or responsibility of the factors.
Mm-hmm.
So you not only do it, but you're saying that you own it and you're fully responsible for it. Owning it means you have full responsibility. That means responsibility means all sides. It
Hmm.
means my side, your side, the bank side, the property side, everything. Every angle you could hit that property with, you're going to take responsibility for it.
Wow.
Right?
Sure.
So by owning title to real estate, or if your entity owns it, you know, it's controlled by you or your entity. That's what I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
right? By own,
LLC.
right?
Yeah.
By owning title to real estate, you have the legal rights to ownership and full control of that property. In other words, the buck stops with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a deed is the actual legal document that transfers title, right? Or ownership from one to the other and can be displayed on public record for all to see who has title on a property. So Peter and I can make a deal and I can say, Peter, I want to give you my piece of property. You have title.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no declaration or there's nothing in writing to put on public record, who would know that?
Oh, sure. They wouldn't. I mean, everything has to be written someplace so you can track who's in charge.
So it's written and filed. Not
Hmm.
only is it done so it could be put on public record, but it could be done so that the banks can know, so that the bank could be in first position lien.
Mm-hmm.
There can't be any skullduggery on putting the bank in third position and putting my dad in first position. So when they foreclose, my dad gets all the money and the bank gets nothing.
Hmm.
Right? So there's a bunch of legal ramifications to this, but the title is the person owns it. Like the CEO of ABC company has that title, right? The janitor has a title, right? The car washer has a title. My wife has a title. My kids have a title, 1, 2, and 3. right? This is my first kid, my second kid, my third kid, right?
Mhm.
Everything's got a title, right? And the title and the deed shows the declaration or in writing what my title is or who's in charge. Okay. In other words, the buck stops with me,
Mhm.
right? So it's the deed is the legal document that is on file on public record that says this is the person you have to go to because the buck stops with them.
Is that why when we talk to people on the phone about buying the house, we ask them, "Hey, whose name is on the deed?"
Exactly, because what it tells us is who's on title, and that person is the one that's going to make the final decisions.
We
Right?
hope. Yeah.
Now, all this is true unless you do what our politicians do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
So I'm going to explain that in the next couple minutes. So realize there are only 4 types of titles that are
Mm-hmm.
put on a deed. Only 4 types of titles. Most people don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
There are only 4 types of titles. The
Okay.
first one is you is a person's name. That's an entity,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a title. You put your name on the deed.
Sure.
William Hawthorne owns property ABC. You're an entity, right?
Okay.
Number 2, it's an entity like an LLC, an S corporation, C corporation, any one of those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's where asset protection lies in, and tax,
Like benefits?
yeah, I guess you could say tax filings happen because each
Ah.
type of entity has a different way to file the taxes that then does have
Oh.
benefits,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it makes a difference on how profits are being recorded with the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 is a partnership. Partnerships are specific LLCs that have very specific language in them. They're different than the entities.
Hmm.
Okay. And then number 4 is a trust. And there are multiple kinds of trusts.
Yeah.
So the 4 types of titles that could be on a deed is a person's name, an entity like an LLC, S corporation, or whatever, a partnership agreement, or a trust. This is very
Got it.
important. And
Yeah.
each of these have some portion or the entire portion of the title. So you could have a partnership and says, okay, these 2 people have title. This person has 50%, this person has 50%.
Hmm.
Title ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So they are collectively going to make a decision together. One can't make a decision without the other.
Hmm.
Right? The deed is not the responsible factor here. The deed is just the person's name for public record. So you don't sue the deed, you sue the title.
Okay.
Right? Default and the mortgage goes after the title, not the deed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And a title has a conceptual idea until you actually put it in writing. So I could say, yeah, I mean, my house, for example, I owned my house for 15 years on an agreement for deed.
Hmm.
I didn't have the title to my house. I borrowed money from a partner to buy my house,
Mm-hmm.
and I had an agreement for deed. Everybody in my family, even my wife, thought I owned the house.
Well, you're living there.
But I didn't. I paid all the bills and I owned it. I was not on title, so technically I didn't own the house.
Yeah.
Right. So it has to actually be in writing, and that's called the deed. Right. So then at some point I decided, okay, I wanna make a deal with my partner, and we flipped things around. All we did was change paperwork, and then my wife became on title. Right.
Yep.
The declaration on public record is what matters, because that is the beginning of the search. The dog sniffing for who owns the property and who's got money. Okay, so now let's circle back to our subject to deal, where the seller turns over the title as owner by giving you the deed. but the loan stays in the seller's name. Is it starting to make sense?
Oh yeah, but what you just said, if people aren't familiar with this, they just wig their brains a little bit.
Right.
Do that again.
Yeah. So okay, so let's circle back to our subject to deal, where the
Yeah.
seller turns over his title as ownership by giving you a deed,
Mm.
but the loan stays in the seller's name.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to cover this in a minute because this is the safest deal any seller could do with us.
Hmm.
Out of all our transactions, this is the safest deal they could do. But I urge you to consider this. If a lender has a note with a collateralized mortgage
Mm-hmm.
attached to it, what is the seller really giving us? You see what
Don't
I'm
ask.
saying?
No. Well,
Okay.
what's he giving us?
What is he really giving us? So,
Yeah.
house is worth $200,000 because I like to have 20% worth of equity. Let's say the seller says, I'll agree. Well, you say to the seller, okay, so a lot of times I do something with the financing. You have a mortgage, right? Oh, yeah. How much do you owe? I owe 155. Would you be willing to sell the house for what you owe on it? Yeah. So, what is he really giving us? Because equity is normally the profit in a property. So in this particular case, the person wants relief from the debt.
Right. So we may be getting some equity on paper, not realized yet. Hopefully in the future it'll
Right.
be totally fine. But he's giving us his debt. Thanks a lot.
So he's really giving us the debt or the note, right? And the
Yeah.
promise to pay it in his
Yeah.
behalf, on his behalf. Now, if he owes 140,000 and he's like, I want 155, I want $15,000 to walk away, then you work out the 15,000. There's multiple ways to do that, which I'm going to cover in a few minutes. But there's multiple ways to do that, right? Which means as long as we do not break the collateral chain with the bank or the lender, the bank or the lender will never care that the check is coming from somebody else's name.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, my rich mom could pay my mortgage for me every month and the bank wouldn't care, would they?
No, all they want is they don't want to pay it off. They want the money to keep coming in. And they're worried if the house isn't connected, that if something happened, they'd be up the creek.
Right.
But they want the money every month, the interest.
Right. So let's take a better look at this. Suppose we put all of this information to use and convert it into some wisdom. Wisdom means knowledge with experience.
Okay.
Most property is in a person's name.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we were to move that title, the person's name that the house is in, what if we
Sure.
move that title from that person to a trust? And I'm talking about a land trust that only has the property in it.
Mm-hmm.
A land trust is a very, very specific thing, right? So we essentially devise a legal entity called a trust that holds the title to the property. While the beneficiary, and a beneficiary means the person who's going to benefit from the trust,
Mm-hmm.
right, controls the property using a manager.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a business. I have a business and I have a manager that runs my business.
Yeah.
Now, here's how the land trust is run. The beneficiary has to have a manager. I mean, it's called a trustee, right? And trustees are put in place in case. Now, think about this. The reason why most trusts are used is it's put in place so the beneficiary can't run things.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why you're putting something in a trust is because you have anticipation or expectation that at some point you're going to die and want the trust to continue past your death, or you become incapacitated, like Alzheimer's or something like that,
Sure.
or just physically incapable of running your business.
Mm-hmm.
So the trust is written in a way that it will continue past your abilities to run it.
Mm-hmm.
So the trust is set up so the trustee will follow your rules and keep things going. So the money keeps coming in.
Right. And
So
they're making sure the beneficiary doesn't do something crazy.
yeah. So, well, I don't know what that means, but so the point is it's like having a business that will continue once you die,
Mm-hmm.
because you have a manager in place and he's vested, he's a part owner, whatever, right? This also means that the trustee has 100% transparency. So trustees in a land trust means that any money, anything that happens, the IRS considers a land trust a transparent action. So whatever money the beneficiary makes, the beneficiary pays on their taxes, but not the trustee.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called a trust because the beneficiary is trusting the person to run their assets the way they want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Could you fix your mic, please?
What's the problem?
On your shirt, when you're shaking your head, I can hear it up on top, the top mic.
Mm.
Oh, thank you. Now comes the political kicker.
Mm-hmm.
All politicians do this because when you file one of these land trusts, the beneficiary is not put on public record, only the trustee.
Mm.
So now in my world, we have, and I'm not going to do this for a long time because I can't, we have a thing called a warranty deed of trust. It is a 1.5-page document that we fill out. And when we fill it out and the seller signs it and notarizes it, it A, gives me a warranty saying that I know what all the liens are and I'm willing to accept them. B, it transfers ownership to whoever I choose, which is usually my entity. And C, it creates the land trust. And that gets filed on record and it says who is the trustee.
Mm-hmm.
So no one actually knows who owns the beneficial interest of the trust or the entity.
Mm.
That right after that we are gonna generate, which is a document I use that actually we fill in like 3 blanks, right? And it's called a declaration of trust. It is the rules and regulations of the trust and how the trustee is going to be run, right? And it's magical. The beneficiary can fire the trustee with one document. It doesn't need to even have a conversation with the trustee. It could just be in a filing cabinet.
Hmm.
The beneficiary can say, I don't want this trustee anymore. It makes a 1-paragraph page, it signs it, and it changes trustee.
And that's not on record.
And it's not on record. It could be if you want to file it,
Right.
but it
But
doesn't
on
have to
record,
be.
you would have the original trustee, which is not the real trustee. If they change it, and they wouldn't know.
So what's going to happen is if an attorney decides to contact the trustee, they're going to say, "Oh, I'm not the trustee anymore. Who is it? I don't know."
Oh, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Which means, so now pay attention to this because I can go on for an entire hour just on this next paragraph. This means unless someone is in close proximity to the transaction and knows all the players, it is very difficult to sue or hunt down the owner of said property.
Mm.
Now, like you and I, we're on a podcast and we tell people all the time. I tell people all the time, but if I buy a property and I make you, and I'm the beneficiary and I put it in a land trust and I make you the trustee, who would really know that we're friends? Unless you're in our proximity and you know us, you don't know that we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I could pick some obscure cousin or somebody that I was in the army with,
Oh,
or somebody that I went to high school with that I trust, and there would be no connection. So how would the attorney looking to sue you know that connection?
Hmm.
Now, it is possible because they can do, subpoenas and all that kind of stuff, but it's a lot harder for the attorney to find who is the beneficiary of the trust, and they have to go through a lot of hoops. Now, imagine this from an asset protection point. They got to go through the trustee. The trustee doesn't disclose who the beneficiary is, so they got to go through the legal process. Then they get into the legal process. We'll say that there's some action where they have to disclose who the beneficiary is, and then the beneficiary is an entity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh.
now the lawyer has to go crack who the entity is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really paranoid, that entity should be a managing entity, not the owner. So it pays all the bills and manages the property, and that entity is owned by the actual entity that owns the property.
Yeeks.
So if you're worried about asset protection, it's very clever, right?
Many layers that way.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so now you see how big deals are done, right? You think the politicians wanted to know this, right? This actually happened about 100 years ago in Chicago because the aldermans that were trying to they wanted to build skyscrapers. This is back before skyscrapers didn't exist, right? They wanted to build skyscrapers in Chicago, and they owned the land and they were funding the properties. So they knew that if the public knew that they owned the land and they were benefiting from the project as real estate, and they were also setting the laws and passing new laws to make the skyscrapers, they wouldn't let it happen.
Sure.
So they put all the land in the skyscrapers in trusts. Nobody knew that they owned them, and then they ran their alderman rights and voted for all the skyscraper things, and nobody knew what happened. And
Nice one.
they've been doing it ever since.
Lovely.
Trusts have been around since the Roman days. Okay, now before we think this is difficult to do this deal structure, because I've given you because of my long-winded theory session today, right? Let's give you a quick little mini blueprint so you can see how easy it is to do this deal.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've given you a theory, it should hopefully clear up some confusions on why people think, on sale clauses are whacked and all that kind of stuff. So I have actually it is a 5-point mini checklist here.
Okay.
So first thing you're going to do is you're going to find a seller willing to do this by asking, would you be willing to sell the house for what you owe on it?
Mm-hmm.
If they say no, you say, how much do you want? Right?
Yep.
If they say yes, there's a whole process there. We call that a double mortgage. If they want 20 grand, you tell them, yeah, you can do 20 grand, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's a whole nother thing, which I'll get to that. You get to them in a note, right?
Sure.
Actually, I'm going to talk about this on podcast number 458. I go into this in great detail on notes, owner financing, seller financing. I'm going to go over all that in the next podcast, so I'm not going to do it here. But there's a way to do it that is absolutely incredible. Okay.
All right.
So you ask, would you be willing to sell the house for what you want it? That's the only thing you need to know on how to get a subject to deal. You don't need to know anything else. If they say yes, what I'm about ready to tell you in the next 3 minutes is worth tens of thousands of dollars to our listeners, and it is well worth you being here for 53 minutes. Because I'm telling you, I teach this to my coaching clients, and I am absolutely blown away at how many subject to deals they do because of this.
Mm.
And you're not going to hear other subject to people say this, because I've not.
Huh.
I spent $150,000 on my education, been to a lot of seminars, read a lot of books. I've never once heard anybody say this. Okay?
Go ahead.
If they say yes, they're willing to sell the house for what they owe on it, you need to explain to them what you're going to do. And here's how you do that. And this is a writer downer. You should write this down if this is your first time. Well, here is how it works. Always start with that.
Mm.
It's a definitive answer. Well, here's how it works. We're going to take the house out of your name and put it into a land trust or a trust. And the trust is going to continue making your mortgage payments until it's paid off. And the trust owns the house and has full responsibility. And we manage the trust until the property is fully paid off. I'm going to read it again, but isn't that so much better than trying to describe subject to?
You just spent almost an hour explaining it. You can't do that to the seller. It's just way too much. We tell them you're taking it out of their name. We're putting it into a trust. The trust is going to pay everything, manage the property, take care of everything, and we manage the trust.
Right.
End of story.
So it goes like this. So, well, here's how it works. We're going to take the house out of your name and put it into a trust. And the trust is going to continue making your mortgage payments, as agreed, until it's paid off.
Mm.
And the trust owns the house and has full responsibility. So you don't need to worry about getting sued or paying the taxes or fixing a roof. You don't have to worry about any of that.
Mm.
Right? And we will manage the trust until the property is paid in full. Number 3 in the checklist. Now, all you need to do is generate a warranty deed of trust. This one document generates the land trust, all with one signature. Right? Now, if you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and click on the top right-hand side, it says courses. I have a document package there that you could purchase that have all these documents in it. I don't know where else you're going to find these. I paid close to $4,000 for my subject to docs, and there's only 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. Jeez.
At the time, there was only 3 of them. I've added more since then, right? The point is that you're not going to pay anywhere near that on my site because I sell the document package quite often. It's flippinghousesforrookies.com, and these documents are there. And I kid you not, it doesn't take long. A half a dozen houses, and you're a multimillionaire. It doesn't take a lot of subject to houses to do this. It is the fastest, easiest way to become a millionaire on planet Earth. I know people that have done it in 6 months. They bought 3 or 4 houses that are worth, $200,000, $300,000 with $75,000, $100,000 worth of equity in them.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take long.
Plus all the benefits you get because you have the deed and all the benefits that go with owning property. A lot.
And the cash flow.
Cash flow, all kinds of stuff.
All right, so you're going to generate so once you get a deal, you're going to generate the deed. Number 4, we then generate a trust declaration that clarifies the rules and who does what. Right, so we're going to have those 2 documents.
Mm-hmm.
After that, the warranty deed of trust gets filed with the trustee's name on public record. Not the beneficiary. The trustee is on there, not the beneficiary. Mm-hmm. And the trust declaration gets filed into your desk drawer and only gets seen by who needs to see it, which is going to be the buying bank, your buyer's lender down the road. They're going to want to see that document.
That makes sense.
Now, I'm going to tell you something that you have probably never heard before. If you did, kudos to you, because I don't know how many people are teaching this because I've never heard it before.
Mm-hmm.
I learned this by mistake. So when you go in and you file a deed, because you're going to have to file this deed with your city, your city clerk or your town clerk, right? There's a document that they call conveyance tax. I forgot the number of the document. For 20 years, I would put down on the document whatever the note amount was. So if I paid $160,000, if I'm taking over $160,000 debt, right, I would put down $160,000, and I'd have to pay 1%, $1,600 for conveyance tax, right? Then I changed my language. So what I put on the deed is I changed the language on the deed because I was in a seminar and I heard this. It was one of those things that I just picked up, by the way. I changed my deed to say XYZ company or or Peter Coca-Cola, the trustee, has purchased this property at 123 Main Street for $1 in other valuable consideration. It doesn't disclose how much I pay for the property. And I did that because when I sell it to my buyer, I don't want them to know how much I paid. By doing that, here's what happens. The conveyance tax laws say if you pay less than $2,000 for a property, there is no conveyance tax. And $1 is less than $2,000.
And you just
So
saved you just saved a bunch.
$1,600, right?
Ooh.
So now it goes from paying $1,600 in my filing fees down to my filing fees being $70 in my town. So I put on the deed, the warranty deed of trust, all the parties, the seller and my trustee, and I put for $1 in other valuable consideration. That triggers the due on sale clause. I'm sorry, not the due on sale clause. That triggers, I don't know why I said that. That triggers the conveyance tax to be less than $2,000 and you don't pay any. And technically you're not, because you didn't pay $160,000 for this property.
Right.
You're paying it monthly, but you didn't take that money out of your pocket and actually pay it at the closing.
And you're not moving in the house. It's really, the person who buys it at that point, when he sells it, he can worry about it.
He will pay for it.
That's the person who's living in it. We're just in the middle. We have to pay just to be in the middle.
But the point is the seller did not get $160,000, and you didn't give it to them. So why pay tax on it?
Right.
So it's I've checked with my lawyer. It's 100%
crazy?
legal. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now a couple points on this before we leave today. A, the lender will see this activity as estate planning, which happens every day in every city, in every place. And because you're putting it from a person's name into a trust, they will see it, because the trustee will call the bank and say, hey, I'm going to be the person paying the mortgage. I'm the trustee of the new trust. And the bank will gladly help you do that, because they feel more confident, because they know that there's more than one person running the money, and the trust is going to pay the mortgage, because that's what trusts are. Usually trusts are run. Usually trustees are lawyers. Usually. A lot of people will have their lawyer be the trustee.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right? So the bank will gladly help you change the address so that all the correspondence comes to you, the trustee, or it comes to you, the beneficiary, however you do it. It comes to you, and they will gladly take your money from that point forward and help you set this up, because they do this all the time. Estate planning is done every day in a bank.
Well, it's worse than that. I did a few of these for you, and the first time I'm thinking like, oh God, do I know what I'm doing? All you're doing is talking to his secretary at a desk.
Yeah.
You're not talking to the bank.
Right.
You got this girl or this guy, usually it's a girl, whatever. All you do is give them the information. They're just doing their job. They're getting paid. They don't care. They help you out. They say thank you, goodbye. Right. You're just talking to one of the clerks.
So if you want the paperwork to this, go to Flipping Houses for Rookies. Okay, flippinghouses4rookies.com/courses, or just click on the courses. If you can't remember to do that, just send me an email at flippinghouses4rookies@gmail.com, and I will send you the link. And you can get all these. I got to sneeze. Hang on. Excuse me. And I will send you all the documents so you can get them. Okay? Plus, if you send me an email to flippinghouses4rookies@gmail.com, I will give you my 6.5-hour course that shows all the ins and outs, shows all the paperwork, shows you how to find the leads, where to find the leads, how to talk with them, scripts on the phone, everything. I cover every last detail. I've only done this event a couple times, and it's the highest reviewed event that I ever do. I will give that event to you for free. Okay. And I know that, I think last time we charged a few $100, $200 or $300 for it. Right? Plus, I will also, if you send me the email and you want more information on it, and you decide to purchase, I will give you a course that we have. Like I said, I'll give you the course we have for the 6 hours. Plus, I'll give you a few other bonuses: how to make your first $5,000 in the next 30 days, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll give you a bunch of stuff if you send me an email to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Okay, so hopefully I've made all my promises today. It's a lot easier than most make it. The funny thing is when somebody doesn't understand something, they make it complicated.
Oh, yeah.
Once you understand something, it becomes very simple.
Mm-hmm.
So, podcast number 458. I'm going to talk about the different types of loans that you could do. In other words, if you have a seller that owes 140 and they're asking for 160, I'm going to show you how to get that 60 grand from the seller. So I'm going to talk about those types of loans in the next podcast. So make sure you join there. Also, make sure you like and subscribe to us wherever you're watching us or listening to us. Make sure you tell a friend. Also, if you do put in a testimonial, 5-star testimonial, and you want to send me a picture of it, send it to flippinghousesforrookies.com. I will send you a bunch of gifts and bribe you for doing that, for spending your 3 to 5 minutes to do that. And the last thing is, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. That is at Creative Real Estate Dealology newsletter.com/subscribe. And head on over to Amazon. Type in my name, William Hawthorne, no E, Leads, Deals, Cash, Create a Real Estate Operator's Manual, and grab a copy so you can follow along with all these podcasts. Okay? Thank you for your support, and we're over and out. Flourish and prosper. We'll talk to you on podcast number 458.